Everyone thinks Smokey Yunick was just the NASCAR outlaw who hid extra fuel in the lines and cheated his way to victory. Wrong. He was a mathematical genius and innovator. In 1963, he showed up at the Indianapolis 500 with the most radical car the Speedway had ever seen. Then, after one single practice lap, he loaded the wreckage onto a trailer, drove it back to Daytona, and personally crushed it into scrap. Why would a genius destroy his own masterpiece? Because what he built was so far ahead of its time that even the officials didn't have rules for it yet. And what happened next turned one of the boldest experiments in racing history into a ghost story most fans have never heard. Act 1. The Death Machine. The car was called the Python. The name wasn't official. It came from two-time Indy 500 winner Roger Ward, who took one look at it in the pit lane and said it looked like a python that swallowed a piano. The description stuck because it was accurate. The car's proportions were asymmetrical. One side bulged outward. The stance looked uneven. Compared to the clean, symmetrical Indy roadsters of the early 1960s, the Python looked like it didn't belong on the same planet. But that strange shape wasn't for style. It was the result of a series of calculated engineering decisions that pushed far beyond conventional thinking. Underneath the fiberglass shell was a chassis built by Smokey Yunick and master fabricator Luigi Lasovsky. Luigi wasn't just good, he was widely considered one of the greatest race car fabricators of his time. Every weld, every bracket, every component reflected precision and intent. But the Python wasn't just Smokey's project. On the official 1962 entry form, the car was registered under the name Kenny Rich, a wealthy entrepreneur, a Yunick associate, and a man who knew exactly what a winning Indy car looked like. And because he'd already owned one. Rich was the co-owner of the Ken Paul Special, the car that won the 1960 Indianapolis 500. And here's where it gets personal. Smokey Yunick spent years bitterly insisting that he was the real crew chief behind that victory and never got the credit. The win went on someone else's resume. The frustration stayed with Smokey. The money behind the project came from two sponsors that couldn't have been more different from the tobacco and oil companies that typically backed Indy racing. Simonized Wax, the car polish empire that had made the Rich family fortune, put its name on the Python. And the fiberglass division of Owens Corning supplied the materials for that radical asymmetric body. Most people believe Smokey only cared about cheating NASCAR. But here's the contradiction nobody talks about. The same year he was fighting NASCAR inspectors, he was secretly partnering with General Motors' top engineers and Bill Mitchell's styling team, the same guy that built Corvette Stingray, to build something that would make traditional Indy roadsters look prehistoric. At its core, the Python still relied on the Offenhauser engine, the dominant power plant of Indy racing at the time. But everything around it was different. The fuel system broke one of the most basic conventions in open-wheel racing. Traditional Indy roadsters carried their large fuel tanks in the rear of the car. The handling didn't change much from lap 1 to lap 200. It was predictable but fundamentally limited. Smokey rejected that idea entirely. Instead, he mounted the fuel tank outboard on the left side of the chassis. But why would he put the fuel tank on the left side? At full fuel load, the car carried maximum weight on the left side. On an oval like Indianapolis, where every turn is to the left, that meant the car would naturally plant itself into the corners with greater stability. As the fuel burned off, the weight distribution gradually shifted back toward neutral. It wasn't just clever, it was dynamic. The car's balance changed throughout the race in a way that could potentially optimize performance at every stage. That concept wasn't something other teams were thinking about in 1963. Most of them were thinking about tires and carburetor jets. But the fuel tank was only the beginning. The real madness was hiding. Act 2. Engineering that made officials nervous. The real innovation that made engineers uneasy and officials scared was hidden in the suspension. Smokey wanted something no Indy car had ever done before. He wanted all four wheels to lean into the corners, like a motorcycle. In standard race cars, the tires stay mostly upright while the chassis rolls. But Smokey believed there was another way to generate grip by using camber thrust. If the wheels could tilt inward during cornering, they could increase contact with the track and produce more lateral force, more grip, more speed. To achieve this, Smokey worked with engineers from General Motors' Saginaw Steering Division, led by Chief Engineer Phil Ziegler. They developed a complex suspension system that allowed all four wheels to bank inward under load. This is literally the grandfather of the active camber and weight jacking systems you see in today's Indy car and F1. On paper, it was revolutionary. In practice, several issues appeared. The system added considerable weight to a car already carrying an oversized left-side fuel tank. The joints used, plastic-filled spherical units, were durable but not ideal for racing precision. The camber change was not consistently controlled. But why risk such an unproven system when conventional cars were already winning? Smokey himself criticized the execution, particularly the weight and lack of refinement. Still, he pressed forward because the theory was too promising to abandon. Meanwhile, General Motors contributed to the visual side of the car. The Python's fiberglass body was designed under Bill Mitchell's GM styling department, the same department responsible for the Corvette Stingray and some of the most beautiful production cars of the era. Larry Shinoda, one of Mitchell's most gifted designers, had a hand in shaping it. Shinoda would later design the Boss 302 Mustang. His fingerprints were all over the Python's aggressive asymmetric form. The body wasn't designed purely for show. Aerodynamic considerations were made, even if this was still years before teams began truly optimizing downforce and drag at Indianapolis. The asymmetry served the offset weight and suspension geometry. The suspension looked brilliant on paper, but one wrong move at speed would turn genius into disaster. Act 3. The Crash and Shocking Decision. The Python first appeared at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in 1962, but it never raced. It was still in an experimental phase. Driver Jim Rathman tested the car in practice, but the team ultimately chose to qualify a more conventional Watson Offie, the 1960 winner, for the race. By 1963, it returned in revised form. Changes were made, but the core concepts remained the same: offset weight distribution and experimental suspension geometry. And then, he made a decision that shocked everyone who knew anything about Indianapolis racing. He gave the car to Curtis Turner, a NASCAR legend, fearless, aggressive, and recently banned from NASCAR for attempting to organize a drivers' union. So he went to Indy to prove a point in Smokey's death machine. Curtis Turner gets in for practice. One warm-up lap. Turn 3. Bang! Wall at 150+ miles per hour. Car totaled. Turner's open-wheel career, which had barely started, ended in that moment. The crash took 60 seconds. The investigation took decades and still hasn't produced a definitive answer. The suspension system almost certainly played a role. Inconsistent camber behavior at speed could produce sudden, unpredictable changes in grip. The added weight could have affected responsiveness. Tires of the era were not designed for aggressive camber dynamics. The car had minimal testing at speed. Turner's familiarity with the system was limited. He was a NASCAR oval specialist, not an Indianapolis-style open-wheel driver. Smokey doesn't even blink. He has the wreckage hauled home and crushed. He didn't just scrap it, he erased it. But why destroy every trace, right? Because some failures are too dangerous to let anyone copy. He would later dismiss the entire episode with a single line: "The Python may well have been my most unmemorable Indy adventure, on the track at least." But that statement probably had hidden meaning, because nothing about the Python was forgettable. Act 4. 20 years ahead of its time. Here's what nobody talks about. That banked wheel trick wasn't crazy, it was 20 years ahead of its time. Modern simulators prove it would have given insane grip. The ability for all four wheels to lean into corners could have delivered massive gains in traction. The core idea does align with later advancements in race car engineering. Modern racing incorporates precise camber control, dynamic suspension tuning, and tire behavior modeling. By the 1980s, Formula One engineers were spending enormous resources on active suspension systems that could precisely control ride height, roll, and camber in real time. By the 1990s, those systems were banned for being too effective because they gave cars such a massive grip advantage that the racing became processional. What Smokey was attempting in 1963 was a mechanical, passive version of the same idea. The execution was crude because the materials and manufacturing tolerances of 1963 couldn't deliver what the theory required. But the theory was right, only that Indy wasn't ready. Smokey was building tomorrow's car in 1963. The Python wasn't an isolated case. It fit a pattern that defined Smokey Yunick's entire career. He didn't just bend the rules, he operated beyond them. Again and again, he built machines that were faster, smarter, and more advanced than what the rulebook anticipated. And almost every time the response was the same: pushback, restriction. 1 year later, he would build another controversial machine, a 620-horsepower Ford Torino powered by a Boss 429 engine that pushed the limits of NASCAR legality. Just like the Python, it represented a leap forward. And just like the Python, it ran straight into the boundaries of what officials were willing to allow. The Python wasn't a failure. It was proof Smokey Yunick wasn't just a garage genius or rule bender. He was a time traveler stuck in the wrong decade. Instead of letting the world watch his masterpiece fail publicly, he destroyed the evidence himself. Classic Smokey. Drop a like if you want the full colorized crash wreckage photos. Comment Python, and I'll send the raw before/after files. Next week, the 7/8 scale Chevelle that broke the rulebook so hard, NASCAR still doesn't talk about it. Smash subscribe. We're resurrecting every lost Smokey machine in 4K color. This is Paul from Rare Car Stories. See you down the road.